Good morning to you listeners. Today is Wednesday, September 11th, 2019. This is the Morning 4 podcast, and I'm your host, Katie Parsons. You know, every September 11th is kind of a quiet morning for me, a very reflective morning, as it is for many people here in America and around the world. I spent this September 11th the same way I did September 11th, 2001, and that was running. I was a college student on that date 18 years ago, and I was out running with a friend when the first plane hit the first Twin Tower, and I came home to one of my roommates watching on TV, trying to figure out what was going on, and together we watched the second plane hit. And a lot has happened, obviously, in those 18 years. This morning, I'm running from a different state with different friends. I have 5 kids now. I'm no longer in college, thank goodness. But I still get to enjoy those freedoms that I enjoyed that morning back in 2001. So it's always a morning that I like to take pause and be very grateful for the freedoms I have, for the health of myself, my family, and my loved ones. And of course, to think about those people who gave their own lives that day and to keep them in our hearts and minds. So with that in mind, today's special edition of the Morning 4 is a special September 11th edition meant to make you think about your own blessings and put some perspective on today. So let's get started with
Number 1.
Well, there were many heroes of September 11th. I like to focus on them, as many others do. And there were so many people who stepped up in the face of terrifying moments to put their lives in front of, to put the lives of others in front of theirs. Well, getting a little choked up. Sorry about that. I wanted to mention a few of those heroes today on the podcast. The first is Officer Mara Smith of the NYPD. She was the first officer to report the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, when she saw the first plane strike the first tower of the World Trade Center. She was a 13-year NYPD veteran. She ran into the towers and began assisting in the evacuation. She stayed calm as she ushered people out of the building, according to many witnesses. Officer Smith is credited with saving hundreds of lives that day, but she gave her own in the process. She was the only female NYPD officer to die on 9/11. Thank you, Officer Smith. We will not forget.
Number 2.
Another hero from that date was 31-year-old Mark Bingham, the CEO of the Bingham Group, a San Francisco-based PR firm. On September 11th, 2001, Bingham was seated in first class on United Flight 93 en route from Newark to San Francisco when hijackers rushed the cockpit in an effort to crash the plane, believed into the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Instead, the plane crashed well before D.C., as is well documented because several members of the flight there kind of overtook the hijackers. One of them was Bingham, a 6'5" rugby player who had once disarmed a man who attempted to rob him at gunpoint. He is thought to be one of the group's leaders who successfully thwarted the terrorist plot. Bingham, who was openly gay, was honored in a documentary about his life entitled The Rugby Player. Thank you, Mr. Bingham. We will never forget.
Number 3.
Today's news story is sourced from thriveglobal.com. Well, where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? 18 years since the largest terrorist attack on American soil took place, and I think those of us who remember that day can recall it in the specific way that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. It holds a special place of sadness and remembrance. Well, people often say to never forget, and it seems that Americans are actually taking that to heart through action. According to the organization Together Tomorrow, September 11th has become the nation's largest day of charitable engagement. The organization reports that more than 30 million people observe 9/11 each year by doing good deeds and engaging in other forms of charitable service, and that 50% of individuals who don't participate said that they would on a future 9/11 if asked or invited. Together Tomorrow describes in their official 9/11 Day Participation Guide. Ultimately, we want something positive to come from the sacrifices made. Also, we want to forever remember and keep alive the spirit of unity that arose in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. We became one nation, bonded by our universal concern for the well-being of others and our desire to help those in need. I hope that you and your family can find some way to serve today. Check today's show notes for some ideas.
Number 4.
Well, let's go ahead with today's affirmation. I hope today's podcast was not meant to make you sad, but meant to make you the opposite. Very reflective of the blessings in your own life, including health, family, friends, and freedom. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and pump ourselves up a little bit before today's podcast episode ends. Repeat after me. Confidence is learned. Today I walk with my head held high. Appreciate your freedoms today, be confident, be positive, and I'll see you back here again tomorrow morning.